Welcome to the Casual Boys podcast. I'm Francisco,
And I'm Brandon.
and we're here to talk about movies, TV, current events, memes, and the internet. But keep it casual.
Yes, of course. We always keep it casual.
Now, Brandon,
Yes,
I'd like to have a casual conversation about movie villains.
of
But
course.
first, I'd like to talk about how are you handling this villain of our time, the coronavirus,
Oh, the ultimate villain.
the deadly.
Oh gosh, it's been a trip. Let's say that much. It's been a trip. It was I guess kind of surreal when we finally realized it happened here in Houston, but now that it's I guess official, it really sucks. Like I was doing okay, and then yesterday I think I was stressed out a lot that I to the point where I needed to just lie down in my room for about 2 hours.
Oh,
Yeah. And I didn't even sleep. I just laid down on the floor in the dark just to isolate myself.
yeah. I'm on lockdown because I'm on spring break technically, and I'm not. My work is connected to my school, so I'm not allowed to work. So I'm not allowed to just go to school, and so my
Mm.
dad's like, "Hey, just stay home for 2 weeks," and I'm just like, "Oh," because I gave myself all this stuff that I wanted to do, like do a bunch of assignments, like get ahead and stuff,
Right, right.
like a good boy. And I think just yesterday, under the weight of all of those expectations for myself, I just collapsed and was watching Friday Night Lights until 3 in the morning.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I definitely understand what you mean.
But to be fair, it's a pretty interesting show, and I only watched. I think I'm past where I stopped watching when it first came out, which is like the fifth episode or something.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I started watching it because of that episode of Parks and Rec where Leslie she's trying to replace Anne. And so she has all the women in the
I know
office
what
like
you're
go
talking
out, yeah. And then she's like, "What's your favorite show?" And then they all say their own, and she's like, "The correct answer is Friday Night Lights." So I guess after that episode, it made me want to watch it,
hmm
and it's all on Hulu. So I was like, "Okay,
Oh, it's
might as
Hulu,
well."
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you mean. My one of my part-time jobs, they said don't come in for about 2 weeks, and my other job, which is at a restaurant, it's been very slow, and I just got my schedule yesterday, and I'm working my entire shift by myself
Mm.
because Houston has been directed to go from no dine-ins only to takeout or delivery, and we only do delivery through like third parties such as Uber Eats, Grubhub, Postmates. So right now it's been a little stressful. I'm not
Have
gonna lie.
Have you had anybody come in just for takeout?
Yeah, we actually have a lot of people coming out for takeout. It's just I think it was Friday. Friday it was very slow this
Mm.
past Friday.
I mean, to be expected. A lot of your
Absolutely,
a lot
yeah.
of your customer base comes from the school that's right next to you.
Right, and we have also like a lot of construction workers and a lot of office people, and right now everybody's working from home or being directed not to work right now. So it's been sucky to say the least.
Mm. I want to transition from that villain in our lives
hmm
to villain of our imagination. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is I wanted to, I guess, spend the first part of this podcast talking about what's um, your favorite movie villain.
My favorite movie villain. Ooh, that's
So not TV because TV comes later.
a. I think the concept before I get into it, the concept of villains is very not to sound convoluted. It's very interesting.
Mm.
Just the concept of having this, lack of a better term, bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about them that you love to hate them,
Yeah.
but it's also a good job on the creator's part if you remember them.
Yeah. Um, I think that I don't know. Loving to hate is such a weird thing because
Mm.
I hate to hate. You know.
Yeah, you're not about these oxymorons.
Yeah. No. Just hate on the hate. I hate these morons, but I oxy these morons. I say, would you? Do you think you have a clear favorite, or maybe
I
one
believe
or
so.
two?
It's a little probably like on the nose, but I would have to probably go with Darth Vader.
Okay, why Darth Vader?
Darth Vader. Well, originally
And
he
this is original trilogy Darth Vader,
original trilogy
or
Darth Vader.
counting prequels?
I mean, are we also gonna count the anthology like Rogue One? Because that's still technically
we'll count from three. Well, this is your villain, so you pick.
we'll do just the original trilogy.
Okay,
Just the original
OT.
trilogy. So I first learned about Darth Vader when I was very young. I got into Star Wars when I had to have just been a toddler, but for whatever reason, just everything about Star Wars grasped my imagination.
Hmm.
And of course, Darth Vader himself, he was my favorite character, even though he was the villain or one of the villains of the story. Something about him, like I loved his appearance. I loved his gravitas. Like you could even as a little kid, I knew when he was on screen, he had to be taken seriously. So
His gravitas.
I'm so glad you bought this thing.
No.
And ever since then, I've always had this deep love for Vader. I have I've dressed up as him for Halloween so many times. It's obnoxious. I have so many toys of him, and it just kept going back to like what he stood for visually. His
Mm.
black armor, his red lightsaber, and as I
His black guy voice.
his black guy voice, even though he was played by a white guy
Yeah.
in the suit.
And after when the mask was off,
Yeah.
it just took all of that away from them.
Which is they actually make a joke about that in the King of Queens.
Oh yeah.
Quick tangent, yeah. Deacon, he's trying to find a costume for Kirby that's not too
Oh
wimpy,
yeah.
and he's like, "Oh, what about Darth Vader? He's black, right?" And he's voiced by James Earl Jones, and he's like all excited, and then he realizes, "Oh wait," but when he takes off the mask, he's white.
Just ruins it. Yeah, and I feel like Mark Hamill could have been sired by an African American.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, you never know how these genetic things play out. So, what do you think is the most villainous moment of Darth Vader, of his career?
Of his
I guess
career.
we'll stick to the movies though,
Yeah,
because
I
I
was
don't
gonna
know
say,
too much about.
yeah, just for not to bog listeners down with the EU and the comics and whatnot,
Yeah,
but with the movies,
I don't need to know what he did to Star Killer on Force Unleashed Part 2.
I'm not even gonna get into those games. Those games are kind of weird in my taste.
Yeah,
But I guess
I love them though. I played the crap out of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. In the movies, at least, probably his most villainous act is either, well, he does kill Obi-Wan. He does chop off Luke's hand off. He does freeze Han Solo and Carbonite. So he's got a long list of that. I would say probably when he revealed to Luke that he is his father, which it doesn't seem in the act itself the most villainous, but then when you realize like this guy who's committed slaughter across hundreds of planets and the guy who stands for everything evil, he just kind of pushes into his son like, yeah, I'm your dad. You're related to this.
By the way, you know the whole reason you've been doing this is me.
Yeah,
it was
exactly
me.
For that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember when my mom, she got this picture book that she would read, and it had that part, and I remember just thinking like, what are you talking about? That can't be real. Why? What are you doing to me right now?
So I had the luxury of having an older sibling.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole "I am your father" thing was ruined to me years before I ever watched the first movie.
That's not good.
And I think even if I had watched the movie, even if I'd watched, well, that's the second one. But even if I had watched the first one, I wouldn't have. I don't think I would have. I think in my little kid brain, I would have just been like, "What? What? That's crazy!"
Absolutely.
Like I wouldn't have been like, "Oh, what the heck?" I wouldn't have been shocked by that, like in like a metaphysical. Why would you tell me? Why would you tell me this? Like, why did you just let me watch it by myself?
I can only imagine what that was like in theaters at that time when they heard that. Because I think I remember reading that the director of the time, he made everyone keep it under wraps, and especially back then, it was easier to keep secrets from.
Who's the director?
It wasn't George Lucas. It was somebody
Something.
else. Yeah.
It was something with an I think. Irwin something. J. Jonah Jameson.
Irvin Kreshner.
Irvin Kreischer. I don't know why I don't know. I totally own that one.
So he did that one, and just yeah, he made just a masterpiece of cinema.
mm,
But then after, as I got older, learning more about Vader and seeing what made him tick, that's when the prequels also came out, and you realize that this guy was also a person before he was in the suit.
mm-hmm.
And I guess that really fleshed him out, gave him more dimensions, because the original 6 movies are basically his saga,
Mm-hmm.
and you learn more about why he did what he did, who he became, and just it's a very tragic story, and I think that's a key component of like him being a villain is that you feel bad for him.
Mm.
It doesn't excuse all the terrible things he's done, but you understand where he came from point A to point B all the way to the end.
I think one of the unspoken good things about the prequel trilogy is that it's so realistic and that the story is just not very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like if somebody had a really compelling reason for becoming an evil dictator type guy,
Yeah.
I don't think I would want to see that because I feel like I wouldn't. I feel like there's no agreeing with him, you know?
Right, because
So,
he's in such a absolute abhorrent state of morality that you don't think you can connect to that already. And why would you?
yeah, and I don't. I mean, you shouldn't want to. Like,
Right.
even though he looks cool and he's like got like a cool voice and a cool stance, like you shouldn't.
You shouldn't
As
aspire to be that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and people do. I'm sure people do. Sure people don't aspire to, get a woman pregnant and leave her after you get burned in a volcano. But like, there's something about wanting to be.
Well, okay. To be fair, he didn't mean to leave her.
He he left her, and she was left. Okay, and
But
he
she,
didn't
to be
even.
fair, she died from her own sadness.
That's true. That's true. She died. She died from her own sadness, and I feel like people don't like that at all. I feel people are always like, "Oh, that's such a stupid reason to die," but like people die like that all the time.
It's
Like,
actually true of
yeah,
dying from a broken heart.
yeah. That's where like, I think there's people that die hours after their spouse dies. Like,
That's
it's not
very
just
true.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, they were ready to go." It's like, "Oh yeah, but they were also brokenhearted that their life was like just completely different."
Yeah.
And it was almost It was pretty much unbearable because they died. Um, I had another follow up to that. What do you think of the proposition of Darth Vader as the, or not Darth Vader? I guess you could think of it as Star Wars, but in the Darth Vader, in context of Darth Vader, Star Wars as a prequel to Get Out, the 2017 Jordan Peele movie.
It took me a second to realize where you were going with this.
Because there's a lot of similarities there, and I don't think they're intentional. But I mean, if you watch Get Out, it
Which
seems
you
like
should.
it's a lot more. More intentional to a lot more people than you would think.
Is this because, again, the black armor but a white guy inside?
Black armor, black voice,
Right.
very tall.
Uh huh.
I know that that's not an exclusively black thing, but either way, there was. I feel like at least in Jordan Peele's mind, there's something to that. That, oh hey, this whole black guy turning into white guy, or white guy turning into black guy thing. Maybe there's something there. Maybe I can make this into 100 pages
So
or
this was
99
this was the
pages.
birth when he watched Star Wars. He's like, oh, let's see where we can go with this.
Yeah, it's like, So you're saying it's a black guy, but it's a white guy on the inside? Get out. That's probably what he's like. Get out.
It's also interesting that you bring up this whole thing of the prequels because they've become such a meme now. Like everything from the prequels has been memed beyond imagination. It's ridiculous, but they hold up really well.
Yeah, and I think I don't know.
For better or for worse, they're really really popular memes, like
Yeah.
the Obi-Wan quote, "Hello there,"
I feel like at some point you have to credit George Lucas
for doing
in his
that.
writing for making it for because it's so approachable and universal.
Yeah.
Because like I think the biggest problem that a lot of people have when they're writing something, especially like in B movies and like Sharknado and stuff, is that there's always like the characters are very tropey in the way they talk. So there'll always be like the smart dude that he like makes jokes
Oh
that
yeah.
like nobody else in the movie understands, but like that a 5-year-old understands but wouldn't find funny, you know? So I think that it is something to it's something he deserves credit for making dialogue that's so universally like realistic and so like so useful
Yeah. But in a nutshell, that's why Darth Vader holds such a special place in my heart.
because you always wanted to be a white man in a black man's body.
I mean, I kind of sound like him already.
So then you have to change from being Korean to being white, and then do reverse Michael Jackson.
Yes, you got
Yes.
the revitiligo.
We got the reveal. I can't do that. I don't want to do
The
the
Uncle
impression.
Ruckus.
Is Uncle Ruckus done like is the voice done by a black guy or a white
It
guy?
is done by a black guy.
Okay, then I can't do the impression.
Yeah, Gary Anthony Williams is his name.
There was a I was watching Parks and Rec yesterday. Not Parks and Rec, 30 Rock. Shout out to 30 Rock. And
Great show.
Liz, the main character, was trying to do an impression of Tracy Jordan to Tracy Jordan's wife. And she was like, Angie, I want to make love to your neck or something like that. And then Angie, Tracy Jordan's wife, says, "Don't do impressions of other races." And then she like just shut her down immediately. And then later on, she does it again, and then she's like, "We discussed this, Elizabeth." I just thought it was. That's why I said it before, where it's like, well, if an actual black person does it, I shouldn't be doing it.
Right. Which, okay, not to harp on this more, but to kind of build up on that as well. Since you mentioned the Force Unleashed video games, Darth Vader in those games is voiced by a white guy.
Oh, it's not.
It's not James Earl Jones or
Whoa!
another. Yeah,
it's not Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
No. It's I believe his name is Matt Sloan.
Oh, I don't know how to feel about that.
And the reason like he's done Darth Vader a lot in a lot of media because for a while on YouTube he had a channel or a series called Chad Vader. It was Darth Vader's sibling. He wore a Darth Vader costume, but he was a grocery store manager.
Really?
Yeah. And to be fair, he does the voice himself.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, he was the voice in a lot of video games or just side media things as well. I think in the first Battlefront and this current Battlefront, it's been him as well.
What the heck? I think that's the ultimate example
It's
of
the ultimate, like 360. You got whooped around.
Yeah, but it's also the ultimate example of like, I don't know if we should be talking about this, but like race really shouldn't matter.
Oh, in terms of voice acting?
Well, just in general.
Oh, okay.
Because it's just like, so it's like what he's supposed. It's like you could call it the Darth Vader dilemma.
The Darth Vader
dilemma. That's the name of this episode. It's the Darth Vader dilemma, where it's like, okay, so you take Darth Vader. He's a bad guy. Well, in some of the time he's a bad guy. Some of the time he's
when he's
guy.
Not Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have this, by our standards, Caucasian man, who he is mostly robotic now, right? Is that, I don't know what the percentages, but I'm pretty sure he's more robot than human.
Right, he's more machine than man.
Yeah. So technically, he's as human as he is white. But part of the machine makes him gives him the voice of a black guy, James Earl Jones. So the machine is imbuing him with this power.
Okay.
But then you have he wears, he's white on his skin, but he wears all black. Right? And then you have this other person coming in and like reclaiming the white voice.
Okay, why are we using the word reclaim?
I feel like that's a word that should be used right now. Is it reclaiming Darth Vader's voice? I'll say that.
All right.
Back. And so what do you? I don't know how. I guess that's just okay.
What I like about this is like you're not technically taking a stance. You're like putting in all the factors and
I
like
think
putting it around.
I'm struggling with understanding it myself.
Yeah,
It's not as it's as
it's
confusing
very
to
cathartic right
everyone
now for you.
involved. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
And
everyone.
it's funny because originally James Earl Jones wasn't casted as the voice of Darth Vader. They
Yeah.
were going to use the original actor,
Oh, really?
and George Lucas wasn't satisfied about the voice that was coming out of it,
Uh huh.
and so he needed to find somebody else to do it. And
What's
then
the name of the actor?
I don't know. I'll look it up.
Okay, because because I know he was like super tall or whatever, and that's why
Very tall, yeah.
he was the guy. But I don't know. Maybe it's like a Django
David
Fett.
Prowse.
David Prowse. Yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to say his name was Rob. Wait, what's the name of the guy that is Darth Maul?
Ray Park.
Ray Park. Yeah. So yeah, that it's. I think that George Lucas is just very particular and just he'll just never be happy
Yeah.
with with anything he puts out. So even though he already, did the specialized editions or whatever, and that's all we have now, I think he's just never. Even that is just not close enough to what he wants in his head. So he just had to like get rid of it. And I remember he described it as like he was giving his children away to slavery or something. Like that's what that's what he said.
Really?
Yeah, whatever he I don't remember the exact words, but whenever he was talking about the movies that Disney was making or somebody asked him about him, he said that he felt something like that he had like given away his kids to slavery, and I'm just like you gave them away. Like what do you expect? Like if you knowing yourself and knowing how much control you like wrenched back to yourself when
Right.
making the original trilogy, like what did you expect to like what they were gonna make?
Mm-hmm.
Like they were gonna make what you wanted, even even if he had given them scripts or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah,
they
and
were
you're
never
right
gonna
because
make
he
that.
said it to Charlie Rose
Mm.
before Charlie Rose is canceled.
Oh yeah,
That he described Disney as white slavers when talking about purchasing his
white
film
slavers.
franchise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. Okay, we're just gonna stop talking about race now. There's just too much there. But back to 30 Rock, there was an episode. I want to say Tracy was there was a part where he was like campaigning to get an Oscar,
Yeah, I remember this episode. Yeah.
and he like was doing the like interview circuit. I don't know if it was that or if it was before, but he was like complaining to Kenneth. He was about like the interviews that he had to do, and he's like, "They made me go on Charlie Rose." Oh wait, I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing the impression, but yeah, that's my Tracy Jordan impression. And he's like, "They made me go on Charlie Rose," and Kenneth was like, "Sir, that's horrible." I'm like, maybe
They were onto something.
they were Hannibal Buressing Charlie Rose all the way back then.
Can you explain what that means for people who might not
Oh,
understand?
Hannibal Buress. So Hannibal Buress, he started doing the he started doing the I guess, jokes about Bill Cosby's illicit activities
Mm-hmm.
way before anybody else. He was just like, "Oh, Bill Cosby raped whatever, whatever." Nobody says anything though, and he just like would say it like in his sets, just like as asides almost, because like people would just kind of be like, "Ha ha ha" for a minute, and then nobody would ever do anything about it.
Right.
And then when all this stuff finally came out, it's like people started going back to him like, "Oh, hey, um, you were right the whole time. You were right the whole time." He's like, yeah, and it's almost like he didn't care, or he was just like mad that it took so long.
Yeah, yeah.
So, shout out to Hannibal Buress,
Which is
and
crazy.
no shout out to Charlie Rose. Is there someone here, or are you just looking?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, okay, we had an intrusion into the studio, but it's okay. That's been solved now.
And the joke that James Earl Jones said when he was casted for the role was that George Lucas wanted a quote unquote darker voice. And these are words used by James Earl Jones in a lot of interviews. And you can tell like he's kind of proud about the little like quip that he made.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know, it's such an iconic voice.
Hmm.
Like there's a reason so many people try to replicate it. So many people try to match it up or follow it, and it's one of a kind for this man.
I feel like James Earl Jones, yeah, James Earl Jones's voice is It's kind of like Morgan Freeman's
Mm-hmm.
in that it's like I don't know. It doesn't seem particularly any one thing. It's just kind of like really nice to hear for a long time.
Yeah.
So like if James Earl Jones like narrate a book or something, that'd be cool. But like other than him being Darth Vader
Mm-hmm.
or him being because
Mufasa.
even for Mufasa, I never felt like this is an amazing performance. You know,
Right. Right.
like okay, no, I would say that I'm not gonna say that. Like yes, it's an
This is
amazing,
how this is
it's
how you
very
get
good acting.
canceled. You get
Yeah, I'm about to get
millions of
I'm gonna
likes.
cancel before we even post anything. So I think that it is his acting obviously is good and his voice is good, but I don't think his voice is like I don't know. I don't think it's like
It's not like his soul
him
thing.
as Mufasa. I don't think is that iconic.
Right.
I think it's more so just like his voice is so great,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a good actor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because like if you think about think, I want you to just imagine in your head, and anybody that's listening, imagine in your head the Lion King, the original, and I want you to just imagine it. And when you do, you're not going to be thinking about anybody's voice. Right, you're certainly not going to be thinking about Matthew Broderick's voice because every time that somebody mentions that Matthew Broderick did the voice, I'm like, oh yeah, but then I don't think about it, and then I hear it, and I'm like, this is just Ferris Bueller as a lion. Like, there's something wrong with that, and I think somehow in my head I got it mixed up that John Travolta was briefly Simba.
Really?
I don't know. I don't. He was not. He never was. But in my head, whenever I imagine it, it sounds more like John Travolta. So obviously, there's a lot of things that are mixed up in my brain. But I digress. So for my villain, finally getting on my villain for any movie. I mean, any movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say that my favorite villain is Ricky Tan from Rush Hour 2. No, I'm just kidding. It's definitely not Ricky Tan. I think my favorite villain is actually the town from from Hot Fuzz. I
Okay.
think I
That
forgot
is
what
that is
the
very
neighborhood
interesting.
watch alliance, but just because I don't know, they were so like you know they were so well organized and like they were all going like culty and stuff
Right. Right.
almost because they knew that it's almost like they had to commit so hard to what they were doing that it had to be to like a cartoonish level. Otherwise, none of what they were doing would make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Sergeant Angel. He comes into town, and then they're telling him all this stuff about like the person who worked there before and how he like went at it too hard, or he thought that it would be easy, and he underestimated rural policing, and all this stuff. And it's just like a bunch of these things that they never lied. Like with most of what they were saying, they never lied.
Right. Right.
They were just like, "Oh yeah, I'll take care of it," or "Oh blah blah blah," but they would never say like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill him," or
Right.
"Oh, I'm gonna throw him in jail," or "I'm gonna let him go," or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. They were always very careful not to lie.
And it wasn't even like a half true thing. They just
Yeah,
omitted what the details.
yeah, and like there were it was almost like too simple and too like on the nose, too Occam's razor about it,
Mm.
because whenever
That's
you
a
like
that's a $10 term right there.
yeah, it's another term. Ding 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 ding. Whenever you start to connect in your head, you're like, wait, this Timothy Dalton guy, he's not a good guy, obviously from the second you meet him. But then you're like, who else is involved in this? Like who why is he like how's there more than one killer, blah blah
Mm.
blah. And then
And that was the thing too, because just funny backstory. I had never seen this movie till you got me to watch it,
mhm.
and so you got to see my organic progression into the
Yeah.
story, and that's exactly what that. I obviously knew Timothy Dalton's character was associated to this, and okay,
Mhm.
maybe it's gonna be a twist. He's not associated, but
Yeah.
then you see it's a bigger conspiracy behind it, and it showed a bigger conspiracy in a good way. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't like a cop out kind of way. It was a very
Yeah.
inventive, very like clever way of kind of going about how the whole movie is basically against Simon Pegg's character.
Yeah. And it's something that I think I think a lot of sequels have this problem where they're like, oh, they throw in a bunch of stuff that was never there.
Oh right.
Cause like,
And then they'll say sometimes like it was there already. You
yeah,
just didn't
cause
see
you
it.
like need that, you know, and they'll be like, well, it was there, you just couldn't see it. But this one, like, everything is there. And like one thing that, I'm not gonna say who, but someone I know very well, doesn't like this movie because he thinks that it's too long. And I understand that it's long, but I think the word "too" there is I don't I think it's short-sighted too, in that it's long, but I think it's long because it's supposed to be.
Right. Like it's a justifiable length.
Yeah, and it's not like, especially towards the end, because there is the whole like, whenever it's building up to him like discovering this for himself, it's very much like, oh crap, like, it's normal progression. And then when it turns out that everything he thought was wrong, and then it goes through all that stuff very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So like it tells you as much as you need to know, and it reminds you of all the things that he hit upon that were right,
Right.
but it gives you the correct answer. So whenever the way it does this, I thought was so good is that he interrupts their meeting, and then one by one they just clarify everything that he got wrong.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's just like, wait, well, I mean, this is useful for me, but like, what does this have to do with like, I don't know. In the movie itself, it seems a little out of place. I guess
Mm-hmm.
I can give them that. That it's like, well, this wouldn't really happen there. Just kill him.
Right.
But I think it could play into the whole the society, they thought that they were so smart,
Mm-hmm.
and they thought they were so clever in like the way that they were running. So they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna tell this person who thinks they've outsmarted us because they haven't.
Right.
Like the truth of the matter is, we killed him because his house didn't match. We killed her because if she went to another place, that place might look better than ours. And it's all these like simple petty reasons. And I hate when I'm petty, but I like love seeing people petty. And I know that that's wrong, 'cause people shouldn't be petty, and you should be better than that. But something about being so petty to the point that you just,
You're gonna kill somebody
yeah,
for it.
like almost creating a perfect society out of
Yeah.
pettiness. Like that's so great. And I think that's something that you really, I don't think anyone could do that again.
Like that kind of style that he did it in.
Yeah.
I was actually gonna ask that with a follow up question.
Hmm.
Has any other media done something like that where you thought it was okay? That it reminded you in a good way of what they did in Hot Fuzz.
I think, I don't know, because I think there's a lot of shows that do this. And shows, it's almost cheating when it shows,
A little bit,
I feel.
yeah.
Because they have
A
so
little
much
bit,
time,
yeah.
and they have
And you can
like,
build that up.
yeah, they have like the natural like 5 act structure
Mm-hmm.
where they just build up and collapse, or build up and
Right.
cliffhang.
And as
And you can
opposed to a
do
movie
that.
which usually has about 3 acts.
Yeah. Because like the most different, I mean, the most cliffhang that you'll get on a show is like a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like for a movie, it takes years just to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if you end your in your brain, you have one of three. Like the way that you wrote it is to be one of three movies. You have to bank that the first one is gonna do well for you to
Right.
get to the other two, and then you run the risk of ending up like the Matrix,
Mm-hmm.
whereas like the first one is like mind bending and all that stuff, and everybody loves it and it makes so much money. And then you make the other two at the same time because the studio is just like, make whatever, give me
Yeah.
money, give me more
Yeah.
money, and then none of it makes any sense.
Yeah. Which is funny because Peter Jackson had kind of a similar way of doing it when he made The Lord of the Rings.
Mm.
But when he did it, and this is the first of its kind when he was making these movies, he had to shoot all three of them simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't do like the kind of, they do one movie, you go into production, do the next one. He did all three of them, and then they had to be released in that way.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, I don't know. I feel like
It doesn't
some,
happen as much anymore.
yeah, and you have to make, or you would need something like that to make a good trilogy, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And there are,
Because you have to put all your efforts. You don't have a little bit like time in between to, okay,
yeah,
maybe let me take a little bit more time to work on this, do that.
yeah, and there's no. What's the last good trilogy that you've seen?
Last good trilogy that I've seen.
Yeah, I can't even think of one.
Yeah.
And like the only trilogies I can think of are like Marvel ones now.
Mm.
And like
And
those
even
are
then,
so not, like even Captain America, which
Mhm.
the first movie is like kind of like okay. Some people really like it, some people really don't like it. I'm in the middle. But then Winter Soldier is my favorite Marvel movie, and then Civil War is a lot of people's favorite
Mm-hmm.
also. So it's like, well, yeah, those are like amazing movies. Okay, I'm not gonna say Civil War is amazing. We can talk about that later. But I think they're really like by themselves. Like they only work by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, by themselves as part of a greater universe.
Right,
Because
right.
I think that there's no there's no real, and I don't want to say obvious, but I think obvious is important. There's no real obvious like path for Captain America there,
Mm-hmm.
because like a lot of the stuff that like his character changes either happen or either happen in like the Avengers movies, or he is just like kind of justified in his own beliefs in his
Right.
own movies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of weird for me because like in Winter Soldier, what was the thing? What was his thing?
Was it about that the government watching over them and he had issue with that? He's saying this is
No,
not
that was
freedom.
Ultron.
He kind of says that to Nick Fury in Winter
I think
Soldier.
I think that embitters him.
Yeah, because he said this isn't peace, this is fear.
Yeah, yeah. So that like embitters him to the idea of like governmental oversight,
Right.
especially because it can become so corrupt,
Or
like
like
Hydra.
prevention before it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, this is just completely unrelated to what we are talking about. But yeah, there's no.
But I understand what you mean. Like the whole concept of trilogy is like
Uh-huh.
it's still followed, but the act of making a good trilogy,
Yeah,
like that's the money maker that a lot of people don't make it to.
yeah, because like most of the characters in the movie in Civil War are from different movies,
Yeah.
and like the
And you have to
villain,
bank on the viewer, like they know that the other movies
yeah,
exist.
and the main villain is because of a different movie,
Oh, that's right. That's an
and you're
excellent
just
point.
and you've never seen him before, and you're just like, at least with Winter Soldier, like Howard Stark was a part of Captain America's life in the first one, you know, so it was important that his killer um, was Bucky, because obviously Bucky was an important part of his life.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I think that even with those two, there was probably no real way to make a satisfying third movie without something like without something final happening. So either he stops being Captain America, even if he picks it back up in a different movie, either he stops at the end of that movie, or he dies. So either way, he stops. But I think that was one of the things that kind of saved uh, the third Iron Man, and I know the third Iron Man is not a good movie.
Oh, now you have a
We're not
controversial
gonna,
topic right now.
we're not gonna, I'm not gonna argue this is not a good movie. Um, but one of the things that saved it was that it did have a result.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, the guy didn't succeed in his plans to kill Tony Stark and like reclaim his life or whatever, but he still made him stop being Iron Man.
Which kind of, because in the next movie he goes back to being Iron Man.
Yeah, and but you don't know.
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Which is funny because when I saw that, I hated that thing because I'm like, oh, but he has to be Iron Man.
Mm.
The same way I remember at the end of Iron Man 2, they said you're not going to be part of the Avengers, you're going to be a consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, what? You can't do that.
Yeah, and I didn't like him not being Iron Man, but I thought it worked.
Yeah. Which is funny because at the end of Age of Ultron, he said he's going to retire.
Mm.
And he goes back to being Iron Man.
He does.
I don't know, maybe like in the gap between Age of Ultron and Civil War, what happens?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he stopped being Iron Man for a while because they did have that Avengers facility.
Yeah.
But you know, you kind of do realize that Tony can't stop being Iron Man.
Mm.
But all going back to like your point about how these movies need to be dealt with a greater universe, or you have to understand something because it happened in a previous film.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of connecting it back to the whole Star Wars thing. It's the same thing too because they make those movies in threes, but you also have to like know what happens in another one to understand why something happens in this one as well,
Mm-hmm.
and the events are connected. And I guess you can make the argument for the fact that it's a saga and not a trilogy. They just split them up into production to be trilogies, or
Mm-hmm.
the way that the story goes about it. But also the Star Wars saga has a lot of criticism in it as well. whether it be story points or people don't like the way that certain things happen because of the way that writing was done, or they think it was out of character. And then after that, also because Disney bought the sequels, and that created a whole controversy within the fandom.
Yeah, and I think I think Disney's acquisition of Star Wars will have ended up being a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
but right now, I don't know. They're the dog chasing after the car,
Oh,
and
very
like
fit
the
analogy. Okay.
yeah from the Dark Knight that the Joker says, and it's
Yeah.
like I don't know what I would do with it.
Mm-hmm. Which is funny because if we're gonna relate this back to Hot Fuzz, Edgar Wright was slated
Oh,
to
Hot
work.
Fuzz, is that what we were talking about? Oh
Yeah, right. Yeah,
yeah,
it's all related, people. So there's a through line in this.
yeah,
But Edgar Wright was slated to direct Ant Man,
yeah,
and then he left the project, and then a lot of people were upset, but they were in Edgar Wright's defense.
yeah.
And I didn't know about Edgar Wright too much. I had never seen any of his movies, and so I was very much like in the middle, like, oh, both sides probably had their reasons and whatnot. I saw Ant Man. I really liked Ant Man. But then, once you showed me his movies, and then I ended up watching also Scott Pilgrim versus the World,
Mm.
you see the creativity and like the passion that goes behind it. And not to say they don't exist in the Marvel movies, but this something by itself that was a work of art in and of itself. And I think that's why your choice for the neighborhood watch alliance works so well as a villain, as a collective, because he had the opportunity to expand on that,
Mhm.
and he didn't feel tied to following a certain formula to make that happen.
Yeah, I was watching one of those like script to screen or whatever. I don't
Yeah,
know what it's called,
yeah,
but it's YouTube video. Basically, they show a scene, and they show like the script underneath, and like how the scene matches up to the script,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
the original script as it was written, and they have the opening scene of Baby Driver, and like the opening scene is like there's like a paragraph of things that Edgar Wright talks about, and like he's like setting the scene or whatever, and it's literally word for word what's happening on the screen.
Yeah,
Like he's saying this kind of car pulls up to this thing, and like the camera shows the perspective of like from the car's perspective and all this stuff, and then he's like singing to this song, and he's doing this to this rhythm and all this stuff, and you're just like, wow, like how could this guy? How could you not want to give this guy all the leeway in the world, like all the creative power? Because I mean, what's the? It's Ant Man.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like yeah, Ant Man's a big tentpole character in Marvel, all that stuff. But like, what's considering what the Ant Man that we ended up getting?
Mm-hmm.
What's the worst that he could have done by not aligning it with the rest of Marvel?
Yeah,
Like worst case scenario, he would have made an amazing movie. Best case scenario, he would have been a corporate shill. So like,
yeah.
what is your goal here? And all the people give Kevin Feige all the like credit in the world, and I understand he deserves a lot of credit, but I feel like that in him failing to do what I think is the right thing
Mm-hmm.
with the Edgar Wright situation really like made the MCU better,
Mm-hmm.
because he ended up giving, I don't know when Guardians comes into play, but James Gunn giving James Gunn all the leeway that he wanted
Right.
was the best idea, right? So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
wherever that fits in the timeline, that supports that he should have let Edgar Wright do what he
Yeah,
wanted. Giving Taika Waititi, he gave Taika Waititi Thor, and he's like,
yeah.
"Hey, here, do whatever you want with this."
Because it was a mess at the point.
Yeah, like this guy's movies suck. Make a good movie about this. Do whatever you want. And he's like, okay, and he does, and he makes it like weird, but it's like good weird.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's nothing. It's completely different from the two that came before
Right,
it.
right.
And it's almost unrecognizable. Yet it's still like, you know, like it makes you wish that he was in charge the whole time, and it makes you really, really wish that Taika Waititi was still, or that Edgar Wright was still on board somehow,
Yeah.
because Edgar Wright would have made,
Because they're like the Mavericks of
yeah,
everything. Like they take everything and they turn it upside down, but in a
Mm-hmm.
good way.
Yeah, because you have I already forgot the Guardians guy. His
James Gunn.
name. What's his name?
James Gunn.
James Gunn. Yeah, you have James Gunn. You have Taika Waititi. If you had Edgar Wright, these guys made the movies that weren't supposed to be good.
Mm-hmm.
They made the movies that were no one had any expectations for. They blew it out of the park. Well, Edgar Wright was supposed to, and then ended up making another Incredible Hulk, pretty much, another Captain Marvel, pretty much, where it's just like very much like I guess this movie exists. It's just kind of like an exposition dump, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't like using that term, but that's kind of what it is. Like it's just like, well, here's 2 hours of stuff that gets you excited for Endgame. You're just like, yeah, Endgame, yeah. So suffices to say that the Neighborhood Watch Alliance is very
Yes.
much a very good villain, and I think that that kind of hive mentality is very very common, like unwittingly, like it's like a very common thing to just kind of fall into, because whenever you join like a new group or something, or
Mm-hmm.
like you start helping out with like somebody or something, whatever, you meet a bunch of people, you all become like-minded, you start doing things as as a group,
Right.
and you almost like
You do it as a collective, and you forget
yeah,
about the individuals who aren't the same.
yeah, and you do lose that individuality where you're like, well, I mean, whatever the group wants, or
Mm.
I'll leave this up to the group. And yeah, that's part of the benefit of being in the group is that, oh, well, I don't have to make as many decisions for myself, and I still get the benefit of all of our efforts. But it's
Right.
like,
For the greater good.
yeah, the greater good. But then it's like, oh, the greater good, the greater good. But it doesn't. It does take away from the, or it does it by taking away your individuality. It's almost like you end up losing blame, and that's what I feel like happened with the Neighborhood Watch Alliance is that they no longer felt like they were to blame for anything.
Right.
So they could kill people, they could get rid of people, they could manipulate people. They could basically control every aspect of what they were doing because they were doing it for the
Right.
greatest reason.
Because it was for the cause, not
Yeah,
for anyone's
yeah.
one
It's not
reason.
a selfish thing. I don't. What good is it for
Supposed to
me
be.
that
Right.
my town is the best town? Right? Kill this guy. Kill
Exactly.
this living statue.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, it's kind of it kind of I guess goes against my earlier point that the motivation shouldn't make sense because the motivation it still doesn't really make sense, but it kind of does make sense in that you're where you live is integral to how the quality of your life.
Right.
So
Right.
if you want to live in a good society, then you want to work or yeah you want to put that effort in because it'll directly affect your day to day, especially in a small town like that. So I think that it is a lot more justified than the prequel trilogy. I'm saying that. I hope that's not a controversial statement. That the justification for the Neighborhood Watch Alliance is better than for Darth Vader. But I think that also it's better because it is um, more personal in that you could find yourself in that situation, and you do. Often you find yourself in this situation a lot,
Mm.
and you don't realize it because fortunately it never gets that bad.
I've been recording.
All right, well, I'd say that was pretty casual, huh?
Not too bad. I'd say yes.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of casual
Pretty casual indeed.
a lot of casual tangents there. But I think that was I think we made it somewhere. It's like the Reverend King said,
Which part exactly?
please end that podcast already. It's casual enough.
This is what he meant by free at last.
Yeah, he's like, please.
Free
Oh
at
my
last.
gosh.
Free at
I'm
last.
free of this podcast. Okay. Join us next time for more casual conversation with the Casual Boys.
Bye.